So if you don't have your copy tonight, Gary's got those. We're going to start with this first just short page that's two-sided, looking at Articles 1 through 4. And just a quick history of this. As we were looking several years ago, we're going back almost 4 years ago, with some of the issues that were coming up in church lawsuits with doing marriages and homosexuality and gender issues and transgender issues. There were churches that were starting around our country to come under lawsuits, and pastors were getting sued for not performing marriages or different things. And our insurance company just put out kind of a update, said, hey, you may want to consider updating your church constitutions and your doctrinal statements to make sure it's very, very clear what your church believes, because when you're vague and then you try to take a stand, it opens the door for lawsuits. But if you're very clear in your documents, then people coming to the church and wanting to affiliate with the church, it's very clear who you are and what you believe. So you may want to look into these things. And so we voted as a church to begin working on some updates to our Constitution to amend it and to bring especially the gender and sexuality issue to some clarity. In the process of that, we wanted to visit these first articles of our church to look at, for example, the purpose of our church and why we exist as an organization. So that's kind of where this started. These things have been being worked on by the deacons over about a 4-year period, but the deacon board has greatly changed since then. So that some of it's why the delays. Why is it taking so long to get to this? Because we keep bringing new teams in and bringing things up to date, catching people up on what we've worked on, and then losing things. I don't know if that ever happens to you, but we do some work. Oh, I thought I saved that. No, you saved that. No, nobody can find it. So we got to rehash it, retype it. So there's been a little of that just with all the shifts. But we are ready to look at these articles 1 through 4 on this sheet. And this is what we would like to recommend the church consider to adopt as we come to our July business meeting. So that's why I want to go through this one first. When this is done, then we'll tackle that next document that's thicker, that includes our church officers. We'll kind of absorb the committees and all the things that we've been operating under as a church and look at maybe a different way of leading that. And again, as I mentioned, we're not hoping to approve that in July. What we're hoping to do is just kind of accept as a church to give it a trial run, not change those things in our Constitution until we try it, play with it, see how it fits. We might find some things that don't work or some wording that's awkward. We need to fix it. And then when we're comfortable with it, then maybe a year down the road, we vote that in and make it as a change to our Constitution. So this first one is a little bit more, this is what we've been working on that we do want to propose. The other one, as we talk through it, will be more, let's give it a try, see how it fits. So I just want to be clear on that. So as we come to the church constitutional revisions that we're going to propose, the first one is Article 1 of the name. Now, originally the name wasn't part of what we considered, but honestly, as we've kind of talked through things, we felt like it might be time to just clarify and simplify the name of the church. So before we look at kind of the wording here, I just want to ask the question, what is in a name? What is in a name? And I'm not trying to be cliche from Shakespeare. We're not talking about roses here. I don't care what you think about roses. I want to talk about names. What is in a name? What's the importance of names? What do they, what's that? Okay, so names give identity, okay? Explain that a little bit. Yeah. Who am I? Or who are we, you know, if we're pluralizing it, but who am I? Or if it's a business, what am I? So it should give some indication of what or who we are. Good. What else? Association. Good. Explain that a little bit. Okay. Sure. So who do we connect to? Connections, we could say. That's our connections. Who are we connected with? What ideas are we connected with? What philosophies are we connected with? So good. Association is a good thing. Who are we associating with? What would we identify with? Good. What else? What's in a name? Character. I like that. I can spell, really. I got a college degree. 2 of them, actually. 3 of them, but anyway. The computer spells everything for me now, and even when I want to spell something, it thinks it knows better than me, so I'm always fighting that thing. Character. What is character in a name? What does that have to do with it?
A lot of churches are big on that now. Involved church.
Yes.
That speaks of the hopefully of their character being involved together.
Good. So we could put a little bit of like maybe their purpose or their focus. Focus is a good word. Good. Reputation. Great. Excellent. Okay. Any other thoughts? What's in a name? Identity, association, character. Any other thoughts? Aspiration, hope. Yeah, hope. Good. Names are important. In fact, they're so important that there was a time in Scripture, if we were going to go back in Israel's history, they had become a people in bondage, a people in slavery. And they'd been slaves in Egypt for 400 years. And as we come to the book of Exodus, we're not going to look at it tonight for the sake of time. I think we're familiar with the narrative. But Moses was out in the wilderness taking care of livestock for his father-in-law and for himself. This had become his family and his home. He'd married in. This is where he was going to live and die. And as he's caring for these livestock, we see that the Lord appears to him in the burning bush. And he says, Moses, I'm going to send you to call my people out of slavery, to bring them to the land to which I promised to Abraham. And as Moses is speaking to the Lord, he says, Lord, you're going to send me to these people. And as I go to the people and say, this God is going to take you out of the bondage to the land that he promised to Abraham, what shall I call you? Who shall I tell them sent me? Why? Why did that matter? Because there were a lot of gods. Yeah. There were, especially in the Egyptian culture. And Moses certainly, growing up in Pharaoh's palace, was aware of this idea that there are so many gods. Which God should I tell them sent me? Sent me to deliver you. And it sets, a name sets things apart. And so in our identity and our association and our character and our aspiration, these things are going to set us apart from everything else, from anything else. And so a name identifies us and sets us apart. Hence, we have names assigned to us at birth so that within the family, we're not just, hey, you, and everyone's like, which you is mom talking to today? We have names. Now, when you're trying to get their attention, they don't listen to their names, but that's not the point. The point is we have those so that we can distinguish and set apart. And with a name then comes association. We have family names. Who are we connected to in family? We have character names. We give our children often names maybe after somebody that was in the family, a grandfather or a great-grandfather or an uncle, hoping with some aspiration, they'll take on some of those good qualities that we remember when we name them after a family member. Or we give them a name with some sort of meaning, like hope or like grace, where we hope that that will become a characteristic of them. We have given our children Bible names, hoping that they will take on the good attributes and walk in the ways of those who lived the faith before us and live that out, whether it's Ruth saying, your people will be my people and your God will be my God. Or whether it's Martha who went to the Lord and said, Lord, I know there's going to be a resurrection. I have no doubt in you. Or whether it was Titus who was sent to be a man of courage in a hostile generation. Whatever name we chose with some hope that that would associate and be a part of their character and a part of the aspiration that we had as parents for their lives. And so the name is important. Names are important. Now, if we go back to our church constitution, this is what our Constitution says, as it stands today, be it resolved that the Constitution of the First Baptist Church of Notice be amended in the whole to read as follows. Article 1, name. The name of this church shall be First Baptist Church of Notice, Idaho. That's the name as our church stands. So today, as our church sits in all of our documents of incorporation, on the deed to the property, as our filing goes with the state each year, we are the First Baptist Church of Notice, Idaho. That's the name of our church. What does that communicate? It sounds old. Yeah, it does sound old. There's a reason why it sounds old. It's not a bad thing, but there is a reason that it sounds old. So, let's just break it down. First is a very common thing among churches. There's First Presbyterian Church, there's First Mennonite Church, there's First Baptist Church, and as you go around to different cities all over the United States and all over the world, you'll find, in fact, banks, First National Bank, First Security Bank. You know, that idea of the first was a very, very popular thing in organizations that are old. You know, you don't hear anybody starting out a new bank today saying that we're the first whatever cooperative bank of Middleton. You know, they don't do that anymore. Those are old institutions that have been around for a long, long time. And so it does sound old because it's associated with things that have been established for many, many years.
It probably was an aspiration.
Yeah.
The organization that this church belonged to at one time established churches with the idea, and in Boise there was First Baptist and there was Second Baptist.
Yes.
Both of them have entirely different names now.
Mm-hmm.
But probably notice it now would be the Second Baptist.
Yeah.
If there was, they would probably name it something other than Second Baptist.
Correct. Yeah. When we go back into history of the timing of this church, established in 1904, and church is much older than that, going back into the 1700s, even the 1600s, when they would go into a new area and establish an organization in that area, they weren't really creative with names. Creativity of names didn't happen. There wasn't Wellspring College back then. There wasn't, New Life Bank. Those kinds of things, that was actually very weird and would not have been well received back in those generations. They stuck with good, solid names that identified who they were. And often, institutions would either go by the name of the founder, hence J.P. Morgan, Lottie May. We've got all these things that are vastly popular, even in our culture today, and they were established around the name of the founder of the organization. Or, in the case of churches would go into an area and we have a conviction, we have a position doctrinally, and that doctrine is based on Baptist convictions and Baptist teaching. And so we're going to go in and we are the first church in this area with that conviction, with that training, with that doctrine. And it was then common in larger areas where multiple churches were started, Second Baptist, Third Baptist, Fourth Baptist. One of my favorite commentaries that I read often, the pastor who wrote that commentary said, was pastor of 10th Presbyterian. I mean, how humiliating. What church are you pastor of? The 10th Presbyterian. Wow, you didn't rank very high on the popularity list. But it wasn't about ranking. It wasn't about priority. It wasn't about even order of importance in any way. It was about geographical expansion. We're going to start here, and we're going to expand, and we're going to grow. And that was the aspiration, that they would, in fact, plant multiple churches, even here in Notice. The First Baptist Church in Notice, who would have known Middleton would take off and become a city of 25,000, 30,000 people down the road, and Notice would be stuck with 210 or whatever we are. They didn't know that. And so had Notice exploded and taken off, they would have hoped to have more Baptist churches added as the population grew. And so it was simply a matter of establishing a church. We're coming and we're establishing a Baptist church, and this is the first one, with hopes of starting more. Hence, we had First Baptist Caldwell, which is still in operation, First Baptist Notice, First Baptist of Roswell, First Baptist, we got First Baptist all over the place. And it wasn't that they were trying to, we're first, and be proud and boastful and arrogant about it. It was just simply, names weren't complicated back then. We're a Baptist church, and we're the first one, and we hope to start more. That was really it. Now, it sounds old, as Todd mentioned, because that practice kind of faded away through the 1940s and 50s. And really, post World War II, all of a sudden, names got really creative. And even if you look at, like, high school yearbooks and things, for years and years and years, the names were pretty much standard. You had your Johns, and you had your Roberts, and you had your whatever. And post World War II, now you start getting names that are coming out like, maybe Caleb's, or Caleb was a Bible name. It was around for a while, but you get Sparky's, and all these other things start coming out. And the creativity of names became more and more important. And more businesses were started after World War II. More and more churches were breaking away from mainline denominations and starting independent churches and Bible churches. And so you started having this idea of community churches. So maybe we'll be Faith Baptist Church or Grace Baptist Church, or maybe we'll be Hope Bible Community. And these kinds of names start coming out, and they kind of left this first behind. One, because often there were already other churches in the area that had similar doctrine. So you wouldn't want to be the first Grace Baptist Church when there's already a First Baptist Church. That just is weird. So they just started adopting new names, but they abandoned, we're going to be Second Baptist or we're going to be Third Baptist. They wanted their own identity. They wanted their own name. And so really nothing has been named first anything for pushing 100 years. It's been a long time. 80 to 100 years, organizations haven't really come out with that kind of titling. Hence, when you hear that, it just sounds old, because, quite frankly, it is. Those are older organizations. And so the idea of first now, what are some of the connotations that come with when somebody says we're the first something? Yes, exactly. It's almost like, rather than just saying, practically we're the first ones with the hope of having multiple in a larger organization, it almost sounds boastful a little bit. It does, because our culture has changed. Yeah. Good. What else comes with that idea of first? First National, First Baptist, First anything. Original. Yeah. We're the founders. Yep. We're the first one. We're the one that kind of is mother hub of this thing. And so then somehow everything else is like, the children or inferior in some way. Second class. Yeah, it can communicate that to some people. Good. What else? What's that? Stale. Okay, just because, man, that thing's been there a long time. It's stagnated. It's gone stale because it's so old. Yeah, good. I think another thing, too, that kind of comes in is just the idea of competition. That we're in competition now with other people. Because our society has become extremely competitive. Whether it's college scholarship applications, whether it's, sports, whether it's the job place and the workforce. There's this, you got to be first. You got to rise to the top. You've got to be the best. And so it almost seems like somehow we're in some kind of competition with other Baptist churches or other churches in general, that we're first, we're saying we've rise to the top, and there's this competition going on. And so the idea of first in our culture doesn't mean what it used to mean. And we through the years, informally, we never made some big decision that we're going to drop the first in our publicity and in our general presentation of the church, but through the years, probably I would say 1990s, early 2000s, as Pastor Cleve came in and we just kind of started getting out and witnessing and making our church known more in community events and things, we just simply went by Notice Baptist Church. And even to the point where the sign on the door for, when did we remodel that? 2011, 12, something like that? So since then, Stan, I think you were here when we did that sanctuary project or entryway project. But we just put Notice Baptist on the door, and that's just kind of who we are. In our official documents, we've gone by First Baptist Church of Notice, Idaho, because that's what's on our bank accounts, that's what's filed with the state and all that. But informally, we've just been Notice Baptist Church, and we've kind of just simplified that. So Baptist then, what does this communicate? What's that? Yeah, that's our association. Yeah. Our theology, our doctrine, our teaching. And sometime I will go through Baptist history and the Baptist doctrine that has set us apart from other mainline denominations and other evangelical denominations. What is it that makes a Baptist a Baptist? It's not just the name, and sadly, many churches that use the name Baptist don't respect the Baptist doctrine. It's kind of sad. But here's the thing. The A, if we're going to make this an acrostic to kind of remember Baptist teaching, the A, we remember, reminds us that we believe in autonomy of the local church. Each church is independent, makes its own decisions. We're not owned by any big group. We don't have any pope or bishop or cardinal or any circuit riding person that's going to come in and tell us what to do or how to do it. We are autonomous. And so everything that we do, we come to those decisions on our own. And so how we practice this Baptist doctrine and how we teach this Baptist doctrine, there's nobody that can tell us that we can't. The name Baptist has no patent or copyright. Anybody can use it because it is about independence and autonomy. So if we were to use the name Methodist, the Methodists could sue us and say, wait a minute, that's our name and you don't have a right to use that because they're organized and they have a denomination and they have claimed that name. And if we were to use that name without their authorization, we would be in a legal battle. But the Baptists, not so. We believe in American Baptists, used to be Northern Baptists. There are Free Will Baptists. There are Missionary Baptists. There are Bible Baptists. There are Independent Fundamental Baptists. There are Regular Baptists. There are Conservative Baptists. There are Venture Baptists. Now, I mean, you can go on and on. What's that?
Even primitive.
Primitive Baptists. Yeah, you go back to North Carolina area, and they're still very, very prevalent, the Primitive Baptists. And so, what does that mean? And why then is that name chosen? And as we're looking at the name of our church, that the name should be Notice Baptist Church, why don't we just get rid of it if it's so confusing, if there's so much diversity and there's so much awkwardness around Baptists? And honestly, one of my best friends attended this church for a long time, and they said, you know, we came to this church and we weren't sure we were going to fit in because we always heard Baptists don't play cards, and we really like card games. We have people over and we play cards. And so we weren't sure if we should even mention that, if we were going to get kicked out or something. And, you know, and so if there's all this baggage with the name Baptist, why not just get rid of it? Why not just throw it out? And to be honest with you, we could. Many churches are doing that. Whitney Baptist Church in Boise just changed their name a month ago to Whitney Bible Church because there's these associations and connotations around the name Baptist. And I'll just be completely honest with you. Whatever name you pick, somebody's already messed it up. If it's an autonomous local church. You can be a community church. There's some great community churches, and there are some community churches that are really whacked. There are Bible churches that are amazing, and then there's Bible churches that are just plain weird. And Baptists are no different. So we can pick another name, but here's the thing with this name Baptist. We have the opportunity to say we are distinct from other evangelical Christian faiths. We have doctrines that we hold to that are precious and important to us. And with this name Baptist, we now have an opportunity to explain that and say, this is why we are who we are. And so we have an opportunity to propagate what the Baptist doctrine is, and even then refute some of those weird Baptists that we could say, you know what, they have Baptists on the door, but they're not Baptist. And let me tell you why. They may use the name because it's not not copyrighted, but they don't hold the beliefs. And so we're not so much concerned about the name Baptist, we're concerned about the historical doctrinal stand that the Baptists have taken throughout the years. And we agree with that stand. We agree with that position. And so we have chosen to propose keeping the name Baptist. And if we want to go through sometime why, what those distinctives are, I think it would be a great study. And we can see what is it that makes us different from Nazarenes, makes us different from Methodists, makes us different from Presbyterians, makes us different from whatever organization is out there. Evangelical Free, there's a group of doctrines that the Baptists have held together throughout the centuries that have made us who we are. And we have built our faith in this church, in our doctrinal statement, off of those convictions. So, we've decided to propose keeping the name Baptist, but then this First Baptist Church is good, that identifies who we are, of notice where we are, which by the way is a very biblical thing. If we look at the scriptures, how are the churches named?
Church in Corinth, the church in Rome, the church in Galatia.
Yep, exactly. The church in Ephesus, the church in Philadelphia, or, whatever place was mentioned, that location was the church that is in that place. And so I think it makes sense that we are Notice, that's where we are. We are in the city of Notice Baptist Church. Now, Notice itself is kind of a strange thing. And many people, when they first see it, how do they pronounce it? Not us. Why would we want to identify as not us? Where are we going to go? Well, not to us, Like, that's weird. So, shouldn't we pick something different? Shouldn't we just, go with, Happy Smiles Bible Community Fellowship? Can't we find something that doesn't make us sound weird? Notice, Baptist, come on. That's, weird stuff. And yet, if we're going to be completely honest, that is who we are. That is who we are. We are in Notice. Like it or not, whether the town's name is spelled funny, whether nobody can really explain where it got its name from, whether you believe the myth about, is the train, going to stop here or whatever. No, it's not us. Or whether it's the, South Greek god of the wind and that the South is going to rise again. That's why across the river it's named Dixie over there. It's the South wind rising Civil War stuff. I don't know why it's named Notice, and to be honest with you, nobody does. It's nothing but myths and stories that have been passed down and nobody agrees. So, it doesn't really matter how it got to be. We are in Notice. That's where we're at. We are located in the city of Notice in Idaho. And so to say we are Notice Baptist in Doctrine Church just simplifies and identifies who we are. And hence, then the Notice Idaho kind of seems redundant. We're in Notice, we're in Idaho, we know that, it's on our address. And so to take out the complexities of this word first, and the changing of the culture and kind of how it just sounds old and a little prideful, a little competitive, if we drop that, and then we drop the Notice Idaho because we know where we are and people that are coming here know where we are, that really then just leaves us with Baptist Church of Notice, which sounds a little awkward. And so just taking the Notice to the front and saying, we're proposing that we just be Notice Baptist Church. It's what we've been called for a couple of decades now. It's what people know us as. Even our church fellowship. I never go to our pastor's meeting and they say, First Baptist Church of Notice, are you guys going to be sending anyone to camp? And I say, hey, is Notice Baptist sending anyone to camp? Is Notice going to come? Are they going to be involved in the softball games this year? It's just, is Notice involved? And so just to say we are Notice Baptist Church, simple, easy, marketable. If we're talking about marketing, it just tells the world who we are. And I think it takes all those elements of what's in a name and it simplifies them and just lays out, this is us. We are Notice Baptist Church. So, any questions or comments on the proposed name change?
Question. Since church is really the only biblical word up there,
Yeah.
very biblical, why does our logo just say Notice Baptist?
Well, it could actually. Oh, the logo, just say Notice Baptist. We could put church on it. We just put the cross in there. emphasizing Christ in the center of notice of who we are.
I guess what I'm getting at is we ought to, like the church in Nissa years ago, they dropped church and they called it Nissa Baptist Fellowship.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we are a fellowship, that's correct. But
But we're a church.
That's a truly biblical word and we ought to use it.
Yeah, it's a good word.
You know?
I think honestly, when you say we're Baptist, I guess it's just implied. People in the culture know Baptist is a church, but we could certainly use it. There's no reason we couldn't.
I guess I'm getting at is that the word church in it is written, call it Notice Baptist Fellowship or Notice Baptist Gathering.
Yeah.
No, we're a church.
Right.
Which ecclesia in the Greek.
Yep.
And that it is a called out assembly.
Yep. Ecclesia, which means to assemble. And really, it's an assembly with intention. It's not just an accidental, we all landed in the same place. It is a called out, intentional assembly. So it's with intention. Yep, it's not an accident. It's a purposeful, we are called out to gather together. Yep.
There are people who actually think that First Baptist is a particular denomination of Baptists.
That is true. If you didn't hear Jean, she's right. There are people who think First Baptist is a denomination in itself. Oh, they're a First Baptist this, they're a First Baptist that, so they must be a denomination called First Baptist. Because it was so prevalent amongst really all the Baptist groups, whether it was the Conservative Baptist, the GRBC Baptist, the Southern Baptist. First Southern Baptist was in Caldwell for years. Now they're Cross Point, yeah. So, yep. Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, that was fun. I'm blown away. I do want to get into the purpose of the church, but honestly, we've got till July, so I don't want to rush through these things. So next week we'll get more into the purpose, but as homework then, so that we don't get bogged down and go way over tonight, I want you to read Acts chapter 2. Read the chapter, focusing in specifically once you get to verse 38 through the end. But I want you to read Acts chapter 2. And in Acts chapter 2 is the event that we call Pentecost. And as we understand it, Pentecost was the giving of the Holy Spirit to the believers of Jesus Christ. And we would argue that that is in fact the birth of the church. The church was born in Acts chapter 2 with the receiving of the Holy Spirit. And then we're going to see, once they had received the Holy Spirit, what did the church do? What was it that they began to emphasize and find their purpose in Jesus Christ, having received the Holy Spirit? And I want you to just kind of start noting some of the things that you see in Acts chapter 2, after having received the Spirit, where did they find their purpose? And we're going to take those elements of their purpose, and we're going to work those into our purpose statement, and start to see then, what is it that the church did? What is it that they found as their focus, their emphasis, and really their mission, their objective? What was it they were doing as a body of believers when they became the church? And we want to make sure that our church purpose isn't so different from theirs. Because if our purpose is different from their purpose, receiving the Holy Spirit and the church being born, then we've probably gotten off track somewhere. And so we want to look at that. And I'll just be honest with you, probably the one element that's hard to fit into the purpose of the early church is the owning of property and bank accounts and all of those things. And in our own culture, in our own country, we are legally required to, as an organization, state in our purpose that we do, in fact, intend to own property, to hold finances, and those kinds of things. And so without that, we can't legally exist as a corporation. So that one, practically, we put in on point 4 there. But we want to de-emphasize that, because if we read our old purpose, which is what we're functioning under now, I'll just close with this, and then I want you to listen to what our purpose statement is under our current Constitution. Read Acts chapter 2, and then look at what we're proposing. So this is the old, or the current, I'll just say the current, what we've operated under for many years, purpose statement. Article 2, purpose. This corporation is a non-profit organization and is formed for religious, charitable, and benevolent purposes, and especially for the following. A. To provide facilities for religious education, evangelism, worship, fellowship, and recreation as provided by the Scriptures. B. To purchase or otherwise acquire and to hold, own, and exercise all rights of ownership to sell, transfer, and mortgage real and personal property, to erect buildings and other structures necessary or proper for the carrying out of the purposes herein mentioned. C. To enter into all contracts necessary or proper in conducting its affairs, and to render such benevolent aid and conform comforts as may be necessary. Also to receive donations, and to receive, manage, take, and hold real and personal property by gift, grant, devise, or bequest. So, in our current doctrine, or church constitution, our purpose is to hold, acquire, and maintain property. That's why we exist as a corporation. And so, read through Acts chapter 2 and see what the purpose of the church was as they saw it, and they perceived it having received the Holy Spirit. Look at what we're proposing for our stated purpose to be, and then we'll talk through that a little bit, and we'll find that this purpose statement that we're currently working under really is the state benefits of being a 501(c) nonprofit corporation. As a corporation, we're given these rights and abilities to buy property, enter contracts, receive funds, distribute funds. Those are the rights of a corporation that's filed in the state of Idaho. And yet, is that our purpose as an organization? And what if not, if we don't exist simply to acquire buildings and property and finances, why do we exist? With this 501(c) status we've been granted, what do we hope to accomplish? And so hopefully, our new purpose statement that we're proposing will more clearly identify why does this church exist? What is it we're hoping to accomplish? So, don't need to take a lot of questions on that tonight because we'll open that up next week and we'll dig into that. But your homework is to look at Acts chapter 2 and take some notes about the purpose of the early church as it began. So, any questions on your homework? I don't give homework here very often. All right. But, yeah. The tests are what's killer. Wait till next week. No, just kidding. Just kidding. All right, prayer sheet.